and it is the hour on my time zone. It is 3 p.m. So good day, good evening, good whatever it is on whatever planet you are. This is the panel on audiovisual nonfiction, and for this panel we have two guests. We have Jennifer Spurko. She is a podcaster, a novelist with an upcoming book, D&D player, and in her own words, a recovering literary scholar. And also we have Eric Grove. He's a writer and writing teacher of short fiction published in Escape Pod and Nightmare Magazine, among other places. He's written articles for Bleeding Cool, and in his own words, a general consumer of cool stuff. So I would like you both to first give a brief introduction to uh, who you are, what you do, and let's begin with Jennifer.
Hi. Thank you, Arturo. As you said, I'm a podcaster and a writer. I am having a midlife crisis, so I no longer have a day job. I just work part-time in a bookstore and I'm muddling through. So I spend a lot of time um just like on YouTube and online and reading and watching things, anything nerdy, anything, fantasy, especially related to role-playing games. An obsessive tabletop role-playing gamer. Having been played since probably, as I said in my last panel, probably since a lot of the people at this conference were born, was when I started playing Dungeons and Dragons. So a lot of what I watch and view is related to that, but not exclusively. So I was really interested. I think the topic of this panel is, I hadn't thought of it in exactly these terms before, so I'm really interested to hear what Eric and Arturo have to say and to see what questions folks in the chat have. And I
Thank
probably
you.
should say I'm in Tennessee and we're about to have a thunderstorm. So if you lose me for a minute, I may
Okay,
have to create a hotspot on my phone and come back. We'll see how the electricity handles it.
noted. And Eric, tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah, like the introduction that you gave me says, I'm a writer and a writing teacher, and consumer of cool stuff. I think my relationship to nonfiction audiovisual material is more of a, I almost say one, almost like a librarian-esque approach. I'm very research oriented, and so I utilize it for researching stuff for writing or for my own personal curiosity. Probably a little bit more than I delve into it for hobbies, though I'm also an avid tabletop player, and I've never really thought about YouTube or other video platforms is like a place that I would go specifically to encounter that. So I'm excited to hear your recommendations. Again, I feel like I'm gonna be like weirdly uh, the boring person that's like, this is where I go to find very specific concrete information. But I do enjoy fun, I swear.
Thanks for being here. And I'm Arturo Serrano. I'm a novelist, translator, an amateur RPG designer, and a science fiction reviewer for the blog Nerds of a Feather. And I'll be your moderator for these 50 minutes. And what you mentioned at the end of your introduction, Eric, leads to the first question that I was thinking of for this panel, which is I would like you both to first describe how usually your media consumption routine works. Uh, Walk me through your media diet, Jennifer.
So I should probably say that I have ADHD. So I do both of the things. I do the full on, I'm in a rabbit hole, I'm watching this thing, and now I am watching or listening to 15 other things about that. So I do the hyperfixation for sure. But then sometimes I do the scatter shot, so my brain is sometimes doing that. Um, and also because of that, I always have, I shouldn't say always, I generally have more than one thing happening. So if I'm writing, then I'm listening to music or, certain like sometimes podcasts or even ASMR, just things that are noise. Um, and I do a lot of my work and things that I have to do involve just sending emails and organizing things online. And so I always have YouTube open in a tab, and it might just be playing, sometimes Spotify, but it might just be playing lo-fi beats or, like I said, noise making things. So I'm pretty much constantly consuming, but I'm not always paying attention to it, if that makes sense. So I don't have a diet, but I love my main, I think I watch YouTube probably more than I watch Netflix or, or HBO Max or something, which is probably not great. That's a great, if that's a media diet, that's a diet of like potato chips, probably. Would that be the analogy? So, and I watch a
Oh,
lot of, a lot of that's related to tabletop role playing games and, and just sort of nerd culture in general. But I also love, and I know we're going to talk about some specific channels, but I actually really love, I prefer longer form videos, like half an hour, hour. I'm not like, I got TikTok, I don't, I don't need a 3 minute video on YouTube that'll make me laugh. So, and I know we'll talk about some specific examples, but I love people who do the hyperfixation that I do, right? Whether it's about the music in movies or whatever the topic is. Like I really enjoy that real crunchy, you know, this is everything in the world you ever wanted to know about dead theme parks or whatever.
sounds fun. Now, how about you, Eric?
Yeah, in a lot of ways similar, but also different, right? Than Jen. Again, a lot of my when I describe myself, I sound like a workaholic, but a lot of these things that I do are very specifically oriented around work. So when I'm so I usually don't watch videos in any way or YouTube stuff unless I'm on my computer. So I don't usually watch them on my mobile phone, which I understand is pretty common. A lot of people do that. For whatever reason, I don't. I use my mobile phone for wasting time on social media, like everybody else, right? And don't end up consuming. In fact, I always keep volume turned off on my phone because for whatever reason, it bugs me to have sound come out of my phone or even my headset. So unless I'm on a phone call, so I when I'm on my MacBook, I'm in work mode. And prior to, well, not prior, but like parallel to being a writer, I'm also a software developer, which I don't always mention, but it kind of maybe explains some of my focus. So when I'm on the MacBook, I'm work. So when I open up something in YouTube, it's for specific work. It's hey, I want to actually see examples of what it is that I'm describing. Hey, I want somebody to go into a deep dive about this thing that I'm going to be putting into this book. Hey, I actually want a tutorial on how to do this thing in a program, etc. So I'm going at it from a very I have a need and I'm looking for that need to be met by the media, and then I get that need and then I continue to work. If you looked at my YouTube playlist, you would see stuff like that, and then you would see like exercise videos, right? So you'd see like my hit routine workouts, um, uh, which again, I look at it when we were talking about this panel, I'm like, ugh, I'm gonna be the boring guy that's just work and learning things. But I guess that's who I am.
Jennifer, is YouTube your main source of audiovisual nonfiction?
Definitely, yeah, for sure.
Uh, do you think YouTube deserves to be? Like, if you were to imagine what the ideal repository of video content should have, does YouTube have that?
I think YouTube is in a little bit for me like Facebook. I hate Facebook, but I have to use it because it's the only way I have to connect with people. So for me, YouTube is that sort of like it's the best that I have access to right now. I think its accessibility issues are difficult. It's captioning and transcription is not great. I know I'm not really a creator, but I know from hearing from creators that it's really rough. Some of the just some of the different like nonsense policies or the way they do the algorithms and stuff. I know it's really rough. And I have noticed lately that my homepage, my recommendations page is almost never things I subscribe to. So they're definitely tweaking the algorithm. And I know how social media and SEO and all this stuff works. I understand that having the algorithm is part of how they their bread and butter, right? But I do wish there was a better way that I could, a better way to balance their suggestions for me versus the things I already watch. Like I don't I understand that, I can't discover new things unless they suggest it, but I don't think the algorithm that they're using works great for me. So there are definitely some flaws, but it's what I've got right now. So
Eric, how about your relationship with YouTube and what you think in general about whether YouTube deserves to be the go-to source for video?
Yeah, I mean, my impression of the difference between content that I get on YouTube and content that I would get on like TikTok or Instagram or, just embedded somewhere. The key difference is that shorter videos, shorter content tends to be very personality focused, and longer form work that tends to be more common on YouTube tends to be more content focused. And because I am far more content oriented as a consumer, I prefer long form media on YouTube. So I'm much more likely to want to watch. Even if I fast forward through a bunch of it, I'm much more likely to want to watch somebody doing a 15-minute deep dive than I am to see somebody doing a 90-second bullet point of it. Because if I'm going to invest my time in it, I kind of want to know that they're putting in the effort to provide the detail that I require. So in that regard, YouTube and also again, this makes me again sound like a fuddy duddy. I'm also big on like feature length documentaries, and stuff. So like it's pretty common when I do watch stuff on Netflix or other streaming services for me to fire up a documentary. So I'm really into like that deep dive. You mentioned like, oh, a deep dive into like the, dead theme parks, and I'm like, sign me up. That sounds really cool. So that's in that regard, YouTube definitely kind of is the default. The way that I get exposed to content though is that I don't really get the algorithm or pay attention to the algorithm in these tools. And the main reason is just I usually know what I want, and I don't need them to make recommendations. But the other reason is, and the other reason that I don't is because I'm on other sources. I'm getting like a newsletter, I'm seeing somebody's Twitter feed, I'm seeing something else, and then they're linking to whatever it is that they do. So I'm following links from other places, and YouTube is by far the more common to be embedded in those cases. So that regard, the fact that YouTube is like, I would actually say that my primary source is Google, which obviously is integrated with YouTube, but I'm searching in Google rather than going to YouTube, uh, just because I just open up a browser, go to Google, and go like, how do I do this, or what does this look like, and then I click over to the videos section, and then it'll give me all of that. So I'm relying upon Google for that, which is going to be super biased towards YouTube. But I don't think I've ever searched in the YouTube search window, which is again maybe strange, but I just find that the Google search is more granular for me.
Now, about the other big websites for video content, what is Instagram video good for? What is TikTok good for? And do they actually provide something that YouTube cannot? Jennifer?
I think this is where that algorithm actually comes in handy, because if I'm on, first of all, and I mentioned in the chat, I don't ever watch YouTube on my phone. I just, I use it on the computer, on the PC, but I use TikTok and Instagram on my phone because they're short and it's not as much of an accessibility issue. So for me, it's just, I mean, almost like the same purpose as Twitter, really. It's just, those are social media, and I think Eric did a great job of kind of delineating that those are about the personalities and the people as opposed to the content. So I watch the videos that my friends make, the reels or whatever, and the ones that they suggest sometimes too, because it's 2 minutes of a guy talking to his cat or whatever. Like, if I'm on those media, then that's what I'm doing. I'm just killing time. I'm kind of giving my brain a rest. I'm not really learning or even being entertained in the deeper sense of that word. So those are great and they have their place, but they're not competitive with YouTube because I think they're doing something really different. At least they are for me.
How about you, Eric?
No, I really like the way that Jen put that, and that TikTok and Instagram are more of a social media network and less of a video network, and what you're getting is more like like a social media post that's been recorded rather than like a deep dive. What I do like about that short form is that there are people that have interesting things to say, and there are people that maybe 5 years ago would have made like a tweet thread or a viral Facebook post, but the internet culture has shifted, so now it's those short videos, and it is fun because there is a sense of intimacy that you get from that. Like, my impression of a TikTok video or an Instagram Reels video is somebody literally holding their phone and using it as a camera. My impression of a YouTube video is somebody's maybe actually putting a little bit more time into where they're positioning the camera, maybe even have an external camera, and they're probably using editing software. But there's an intimacy to, like, there are some writers that I will always watch their short like craft talks or just their commentary on those short videos, and some of them are just like, I'm walking in the woods, I turned on my phone, and we're gonna have a 60-second conversation while I am taking a walk with my dog. And that's really cool, and that's not something that I would look to YouTube to do. That's like a moment where it's like, oh, I sort of feel like I'm going on a walk with this person. That's a very social experience. I like that.
Yeah, that video of the TikToker who goes to the woods to speak their mind seems to have become sort of a genre
Yeah.
in itself. Uh, which brings to mind, what's with people recording from their cars?
Maybe it's just where
Everyone seems
you're
to be
at.
doing that now.
You're in your car, you've got the stand. I don't know. I assume it's, you've got the little stand for your phone, and it's easy to just hit the button. But
Now, the different perceptions about YouTube and versus Instagram and TikTok, could it be generational? Because it surprised me a couple years ago when I overheard someone casually remark that kids these days don't use Facebook anymore. Like, Facebook is a thing for older people. Could that be happening with YouTube? Like, could it be happening that the newer generations are bypassing YouTube and are going directly to TikTok for everything they want to consume in video?
I will say that's not true of my kids. Now, my kids are nerds, so they represent. But my children are 20 and 23, and they are all over YouTube. But mostly it's gamer stuff. There's a few channels, maybe some ones we'll talk about later, that that my daughter watches. She watches some vloggers, and so a lot of like some political stuff. My son almost exclusively watches um, let's plays. Now, the competitor for them, if it could be considered a competitor, is Twitch. That would be the thing, again, because so much of that is gaming. So that would be the closest, but it's not exactly a competitor because because of course it's live, and even the VODs are not the same. So I would say that it probably is generational. I think they're probably, I don't know what the numbers, but I bet there are more Zoomers on, which I know is a really old person thing to say, to call that generation. I'm sure there are more young people on TikTok and Instagram probably than on YouTube, but I don't think it's dying on the vine yet. I think because YouTube is so big and covers so many subjects, so.
Your thoughts, Eric?
um, I I guess I've always felt like I was belonged to an older generation, even though I'm not quite as old as I apparently behave like I am. So I'm a little out of touch, in the way that I get reconnected is through younger students. And so that's sort of my perspective. Is I have, like, there's some younger students that are very active on Instagram and TikTok, and what they do is they send me, jokes, little short joke videos, or something. And the way that I interpret it is less. It's less that. Yeah, I'm wise behind my ears. That's Thank you, Jen. We'll go with that. We'll The way that I interpret it is that TikTok and Instagram are competition for Twitter and Facebook rather than YouTube, and that TikTok and Instagram are a visual way of communicating, in that social media space. So where people I mean, it wasn't that long ago, but people would retweet a tweet or share something on Facebook, or even like an email forward for those of us that are old enough to use email, which I understand is less common, based upon my experience again with younger students that are like, "Why are you emailing me?" Um, so yeah, I think it's more about that is more about the social dynamic than it is about the video dynamic. Um, and I also know that those younger students are still pointing people to YouTube, but they're pointing people to YouTube for specific purposes. So, I mean, students are writing students, so the things that they're really excited about on YouTube are usually like recordings of like Allen Ginsberg reading something. Um, but they're looking there. That's not on TikTok. So maybe they're using YouTube closer to the way that I use YouTube, in the sense that they're going with a very specific desire. They're not really going through the algorithm. Um, but again, they're not sending me like shorter versions of stuff that's on YouTube when they're sending me stuff. They're sending me like there's a cat with a hamburger on its head videos, and I'm like, ha, it's more like a to me it feels like a uh, thinking of you hi, social media nudge, rather than this is desperately important for you to know about this cat with a cheeseburger on his head.
I remember when I first installed TikTok on my phone. TikTok goes through that period of learning your preferences, and the very first videos that it showed me appear to be the absolute most popular everywhere on TikTok, and they were makeup tutorials and covers of dance moves. And that was before TikTok learned that I prefer to watch bad jokes and animals. Uh, do you like the algorithm to surprise you, or do you have a preferred way to discover video creators? Jennifer?
So it kind of depends. Because a lot of what I watch are videos about Dungeons and Dragons and other role playing games. And I think there's other fandoms that this can be true of. That can be a very toxic fandom. There are a lot of folks, and you hear the uproar, like Wizards of the Coast says, we're trying to be anti-racist, and thousands of people, it's like getting mad about people of color in Disney movies. Oh, you've ruined it. So I really don't watch Dungeons and Dragons videos. That I don't discover new creators at all through the algorithm. I just see ones that other people have recommended, or if I keep seeing somebody pop up in my algorithm, I'll in my homepage, I might go look and see if they're on Twitter and try to get a feel, or I'll ask my kids. They don't watch a lot of D&D and role playing videos, but they're pretty savvy. And the same thing is true. My One of my sound effect background things is I do bullet journaling, and so a lot of women my age do that, and a lot of them are just living in a different world from me. They're very affluent. A lot of times they're very religious, which is fine, but it's not me, right? It's not my cup of tea. So they're very religious. They're Christian, and that's great, and I love that they're using that for to develop that, but it's not it's just not me. So those are two specific fields that I view with some suspicion, but especially with the D&D, because I don't want those guys getting my clicks. If I watch the video and they're awful, I don't want them. I don't mind the nice middle class ladies getting my click. That's fine. Let them do their thing. But I don't want those toxic guys, and a lot of other like gaming videos, this can be pretty rough. So I try to do a little I feel like a little bit like you, Eric. I'm like an old person. I do a little research and explore those. Other than that, I do find them a little bit randomly. I complain about the algorithm. What I prefer is if I'm watching the video on YouTube and then you get the recommendations beside it. Those I find tend to be a lot closer to because it's more of this specific thing. So that's probably the main way in terms of just selecting things that YouTube is suggesting for me. Um, that I find. And then my daughter is forever coming to me and saying, "You've got to watch this," or whatever. So that's another thing.
Eric, how do you prefer to discover video creators?
Yeah, I'm really persnickety. I don't think I've ever allowed something to autoplay on any platform ever without it being an accident. Like it's usually like I have to dive for the button. So if it's a streaming service, on TV and it's like gonna play this, I'm like no, and dive. So I have the same reaction usually when it comes to YouTube. And this is also where I admit I do not have TikTok installed on my phone, and I only follow links to TikTok. I don't have a TikTok account. TikTok doesn't know anything about me. That was one of the lines that I kind of drew. I didn't have an Instagram account until fairly recently. Realistically, like a couple of years, but recently compared to the way a lot of people are on Instagram. So I tend to be very like control focused on what I want to watch. But again, like Jen says, when you are on YouTube and you see the recommendation stuff on the side, one of the other things that I do watch a lot on YouTube are rock and roll videos or live music performances, and the recommendations there are fantastic. So if I'm watching like a performance by a musician, and over on the recommendation side, it's like here's some other performances they did, and I'm like, well, now you're giving me the content that I want. Or these are performances by similar musicians, and that seems to be pretty bang on right. So I'm pretty, but I will still, read it and then choose to go there. And then the other place that I will take recommendations for is exercise videos, or like, if I'm doing like a trying to have a yoga practice, and it's like you really liked this, you've played this one with the soothing German woman, maybe you'd want to try with this other soothing German woman, and I'm like, maybe I would. So sometimes I will follow it in terms of very specific things. Like if I ever go on there, and I have watched, like one of the best ways to learn to play a role playing game or a tabletop game is to watch a video where somebody demonstrates it. So I've done that before. So before I'm going to go play like Twilight Imperium or something, or if I haven't played it in 6 to 8 years, I want to watch a recap video to remember how to play it. I will look at that, and in those cases, I will aggressively avoid whatever the algorithm is trying to feed me for a lot of the same reasons that Jen said, because it'll be like, if you liked this video about Twilight Imperium, now how about these people that are saying really offensive stuff with Twilight Imperium in the background? So yeah, there's just areas. I also uh, I know. So prior to the panel, we as panelists have some conversations, and my first reaction, because I'd asked Arturo for some, what kind of things we might be talking about, and you provided me with like a whole bunch of videos, and I watched a lot of them, and I like all of them, but there was like a reaction that I had, which is that I tend to like tense up when it's media reaction or media analysis videos. I can't explain why that is. Um, so whenever I get that in the algorithm, I like almost close the web page. Like as soon as the algorithm's like, I'm gonna play this video that's about 50 things that you didn't know about the Matrix movies. I don't know why. I have this deep knee jerk reaction. I have to close and get away as quickly as possible. It is like anti uh, algorithm for me. It's just I don't like listening to these. I don't like listening to people critique media on YouTube videos because there's a format behind it that, like, the way I was describing it to a friend, it's like YouTube voice. It's like, I'm going to tell you about Rick and Morty now, and I'm just like, nope, can't even, like, it's like anti ASMR. So there are things that the algorithm is good for, and then there are things when the algorithm even starts to go that direction, I have to like kill it with fire.
So those are the topics that you avoid. Which topics do you seek?
Pardon?
You have just talked about the topics that you avoid. You avoid seeing media criticism, for example. But what topics do you seek?
Uh, Historical information, like if somebody's going to have like a YouTube series about medieval era costuming, and they want to like show me the stitch work, yeah, I'm going to be like, I'll pull up for that. If it's going to be even like a recorded class, I watched one of the things that did happen during the last few years when folks were in lockdown is that a lot of higher ed institutions put like lectures and stuff up on YouTube, and you could just kind of sit in and kind of get like a YouTube degree from like watching classes. So those things I will actively go and seek out, and if I see them pop up, I'll be interested in them. Um, so it's I what's funny is that I read media news a lot, but I prefer to read it rather than hear it. So I am on all of the film industry websites. I have been for decades. Um, I go to uh, I read trade magazines for all sorts of stuff, but there's something about the production value that turns me off. There are exceptions to that, obviously, but that's the thing. I think it's maybe having had prior exposure to stuff that I didn't realize was going to take a turn towards toxicity, and then I'd be like, oh well, this looks innocent enough, and then it like took a hard turn, and I was like, I don't. I feel like I took a like I took like the wrong I ended up in like a rally for something that I don't agree with. So yeah.
And I think if I could want to piggyback on that, I think a lot of those kinds of videos, Eric, remind me of those BuzzFeed type. I mean, not even really BuzzFeed. I guess it's kind of elevated now, but you get those like those ads that say like, "You won't believe what happens next" or whatever. I think a lot of times those videos are like that. That kind of not
Yeah.
just that tone, but that in your face.
Sensationalism.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Like the audiovisual equivalent of quick clickbait.
Yeah. Um, and Jen put in the chat a note like how it's made, and that does remind me that one of the few cases where the algorithm catches me is that I'm also a cook. So like every once in a while there'll be something in my Instagram or my Facebook feed that'll be like a video on how they make some really cool street food, that I've never had before. It'll be like this is how, this is this person making like really awesome a crepe in Taiwan or something, and I'm like I'm frozen. I'm watching it. So food preparation will get me, and also like crafting stuff will get me. So if there's like a little, and those do tend to be like short and they repeat. So I'll just find myself like scrolling to the feed, and then it'll be like watch somebody make chainmail for a minute and a half. Um, that does tend to captivate my interest. I wouldn't say that I go out and seek that. I would say that I'm there for other reasons, and then they trick me. But I'm like, it's okay to trick me this time. Show me that cake that you made that doesn't look like a cake, that in fact looks like a fire hydrant. That looked cool.
Jennifer, do you have topics that are like your catnip or topics that you actively look for?
Yeah, well, D&D I mentioned I look for. Bullet journaling is one I love for sure. Even though mine is very simple and utilitarian, and this is what's happening this week. I mean, it's he's like, I don't do a ton of doodling or whatever, but just people like talking about their. There's one woman in particular named Cindy, I think Cindy Baldo, who talks about her life while she's just putting stickers in her planner. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, like a thing to watch, but it's so soothing and and engrossing. I really like some of the commentary videos, some of the ones, in fact, that you had sent us as examples, Arturo. But I really love, I don't know, comment. I'm trying to say, like Shiran J. Zhao did some videos about Asian, the uses or misuses of Asian, specifically Chinese, but in some cases more generally, Eastern Asian influences in, in Avatar, the real Avatar, not the Blue People one, or Mulan or whatever, and so it's just wonderful. She's great, or they're great. I'm sorry, they're great. They're great. They're funny and all that. So I love that kind of thing. There's kind of, I'm with Eric in that genre can go really wrong. Um, but I love that kind of thing. I watch so much YouTube, it's almost hard to it's almost hard to pin it down. The only actual video gaming thing I watch is Grandma Shirley, who is an older American woman who plays Skyrim and is just a hoot. So very soothing. I don't watch the yelling ones where people are like playing Overwatch and screaming at each other and stuff.
There is indeed uh, hell of a lot of YouTube. How do you deal with the rabbit hole? Do you embrace it, or do you set a routine, a schedule for yourself, or do you let the rabbit hole take you? What do you do?
I usually let the rabbit hole take me. I don't use autoplay hardly ever, unless once in a great while I'll just find, like, if there's a playlist, and I may just let it autoplay that. So I don't do autoplay because I don't want, a lot of times what YouTube plays for me is not what I want. But yeah, I just, again, because at least half the time, maybe more than that, I'm really doing it as a background to other stuff rather than just being riveted to it. So it's kind of easy come, easy go, you know. I embrace that rabbit hole unless I get really caught up in something. I actually really like AMVs, or like fan made animations. And those, obviously, you have to watch and pay attention to them, but they're also 3 minutes long. So I'll occasionally fall down a rabbit hole of those. But I know I'm doing it. I'll say to myself, okay, I'm gonna give into this dark impulse for the next half hour and watch a bunch of these things.
Eric, how does the rabbit hole treat you?
You know, it's interesting because as we're talking about this, I'm starting to kind of understand my consumption habits a little bit differently. And one of the ways that my consumption habits work is that I can do audio or video easier than I can do audio and video. So it's really common for me to have a podcast on while I'm doing a half dozen other things. And it's really common for me to have something in the background that doesn't have words or music or anything, but it's when the two things are combined that I find that it does require my attention. And so uh, I will let things completely go if I'm doing one or the other. So there was one thing I was remembering that also, I think in like summer of 2020, was this wild time. I don't think we all remember, but there was TV show that Hulu did for a while that was just somebody walking around in the woods, like just going on like a trip in national parks. And at the time in Portland, Oregon, we were under fire threat, and we couldn't really go outside because it was really smoky. And so there was a lot of. I remember my wife and I just literally sat down and just let it play for as long as we could. And it was just somebody walking around in Lake Tahoe National Park, and we'd be like, "Oh, it looks like that water's real nice." You know, like, "Oh, there's a bird." You know, and so in that regard, we just let that algorithm run with it. Like on Hulu, I just was like, "Play whatever you got, just give me that." And there were a few things like that that was all about comfort, where when you know, especially when there was like external stressors, I would let that go. So I guess it depends on the state of mind. Um, I find that I, 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 I'm so focused on work that when I'm not working, I like to be social, and so because of that, it's hard to be social when you've got sound and video. So there's my wife and I will often have things on in the background that we're not listening to. So in that way, you know, we can put YouTube on and just let it play, but it's more important that we're actually talking and conversing and being social, and then occasionally looking over and seeing whatever's happening in the background. So it's I guess it just depends on the state of mind whether or not I would let the algorithm sort of take me away. And I realize that there have been points when I've been like, yeah, okay, this is the comfort that I need right now, and then you just let it go.
That experience with the video in the forest must really have been memorable.
Yeah.
Uh, that that precisely brings me to the topic of my next question. What has been memorable for you, Jennifer? Have you noticed any especially skillful use of the tools of the audiovisual medium that achieve things that are simply not possible in the written word, or that set it apart from the possibilities of text? What has
Yeah.
been really memorable for you?
Yeah, I would say definitely, like I mentioned, fan made animations. I love them. I can't do this at all. I'm not a visual artist, much less, an animator. And I'm just this one of the good things. I mean, there's a lot of bad things that, that that some of these modern internet, connections have brought us. But but it's wonderful that these talented people can create these, these things, which before there was a very high bar, a very high barrier between, an artist and creating an animation that people could watch, right? And now you can do it. There's software and relatively inexpensive hardware that people can use. And I'm just fascinated. I especially love the genre called animatics, which are the ideas. It's kind of unfinished. Just and folks probably, most people know what that is, but they're, it's not like a full cell animation. And sometimes they literally sketches, like the people will have the kind of like lines or register marks and things. And I just love them. I think that's a great, um, just a really cool art form that is exploding because of the accessibility of of the platform. And I think that, art in a lot of ways. Like I love, there's a channel, I don't watch it a lot, but my son loves, there's a channel called Drawfee where people are literally they're just drawing. It's not really, they're not animating it, except in as much as you are seeing the effect of their drawing. And I have a friend who has started, they are creating, they're creating oracle cards based on the plays of Shakespeare, and they're painting them on in video, so you're seeing the art be created, and I'm fascinated by it. Again, maybe because I don't really do, painting or drawing or anything, but I love those. I think that's a great use of a, of a video medium. I'm endlessly fascinated.
Eric, what great uses of the video format come to mind?
I mentioned, yeah. So I mentioned there is something about an intimacy that happens in that video format, in particular in the way that we're seeing non-professional productions. So like somebody is demonstrating something that is unique to them, that like kind of feels like I got invited over to their house and they're going to show me how to brew beer, or they're going to show me how to stitch a quilt. um, those things sort of create a connection that I don't think that you can get quite as easily by the written word. I also think that there is something about the density of information that you can communicate. A picture is worth 1,000 words. A video is maybe worth a million. I don't know. But with a video, reading about how something gets made versus seeing how something gets made, or reading about, uh, you know, a place rather than seeing that place is a very different experience. And you get closer to being in person with video. Um, another example of how video works really well is what we're doing right here, right? Like when this eventually does get posted, this is going to be a conversation between the three of us, and that spontaneous dialogue and the way that we're able to capture that, you can't really do that contemporaneously in text. Like you could have like a chat on Discord or something, but the ability that we have to just Jen to throw something out and for me to be like, oh, that's a great idea, and then pick up and kind of move off of it, or for you to throw out a question to us, Arturo, that kind of back and forth, like we're tossing a ball, throughout the course of the conversation, that is, I think, very unique to an audiovisual medium. And that's another thing that I definitely am interested in. Sometimes when I'm watching videos on YouTube, or even TikTok and Instagram, or interviews or conversations, I think I focused a lot on like the single person, or the single or the almost the digital production. But there's a lot in there where you can see just a conversation between folks, and it's like a lot of author events. I don't know if this true across the country, or across the world even, but in Portland, Oregon, often when authors do an event for like a book signing, they're now doing in conversation. So that another author comes in and they're having a
Mm.
conversation with each other, rather than the author like reading and then like just talking to the audience. And you get to see so much more of the author because they're talking to another author, and you're getting like this whole vibe. So you get that in a video when there's people talking. I feel like people are going to be able to watch this either live or recorded, and they're going to have a different impression of me and Jen than if we were alone. And that's due to the magic of audiovisual content and our ability to record this and put it up later.
That's such a great point. I hadn't even thought of that. But when I record my podcasts, I use, the platform I use is Zencaster usually, and I don't record the video, but you can set it up so that you're only recording audio but showing video for exactly that reason. It is just, I think for most people it is easier,
Mhm.
to converse that way.
Now, when I am doing any writing task or any reading task, I cannot possibly be hearing any spoken word or music with lyrics. My brain just cannot process any more than one word related task at a time. How on earth do you do it? How do you do multiple things at the same time, Jennifer?
Well, to be clear, I'm not really like what I'm listening to, I'm not really learning from or absorbing. It's just, it's a thing, it's sound that's going in my ears. Um, that's just how my brain works. And I think it's just the ADHD, right? I don't, you know, if it's silent, then I start looking around. Like my brain is sort of bouncing around like a ping pong ball a little bit. So having something kind of going, again, not something I really want to focus on or pay attention to because I'm really not. And in fact, occasionally I'll hear a word or a phrase and be like, "Huh, what?" And I'll have to go over to the YouTube tab and like rewind. Like that actually something I'm not paying attention to. So, and I don't know that I have a explanation for it. I think that's just the way my brain works. My husband is like you, Arturo. Arturo, he has to focus on what he's doing. Like even if he's writing an email, right? That is what he is doing, in that moment. And I think it's probably just different brains. I'm not sure if there's a reason other than that.
Eric, how do you do it?
Yeah, I've developed a reputation for because I do a lot of I go to writing retreats or I'll do writing and write-ins in like local places. And I've developed a reputation because people know that when I put my headphones on, that means I'm working. So in fact, these are my I'm working headphones, and I do listen to music specifically with words. And the reason that I do that is, and as writers are always weirded out by this. Like I would say, like 80-90% of writers are like, how can you write words while you're listening to words? And my answer is that if I start to drift from my page, if I start to drift from what it is that I'm writing, the lyrics and the music that I'm listening to keep me from drifting farther away. So rather than going from typing on my page to, oh, over there's a squirrel, or there's my dog, or there's dishes that need to be done, I am instead caught like a safety net by the words of a song that I'm familiar with. So it helps for it to be music that I'm really familiar with, like stuff that I've listened to over and over again. But I always have a playlist, and that playlist almost always has words. Um, it's the same way. I'm a long distance runner, so when I'm out there running for like 16 or 18 miles, the words keep me focused. So I don't get distracted. I don't know if it's a I don't know how I managed to do it. It's just something I've always done. It's the easiest way for me to keep from being more distracted, to give myself like a little distraction. It's like uh, yeah, you introduce like a little bit of distraction in order to like bait and switch yourself from the bigger distraction. That's how I do it. Is I've just always done it. I can't, in fact, can't not do it that way. I can't do deep focus work without words coming into my head because I find that I will get distracted. As a software developer, I also developed the reputation of getting so deep in my work with my headphones on that when people came up from behind me and tapped me on the shoulder, I would leap out of my chair and fall down, because the words help me to get into a deep focus hole. So it's actually required for me rather than like a cool thing.
We are nearing the end of our allotted time. So before we leave, I would like you both to briefly list great creators that you could recommend to people, and also before you leave, also write their names in the chat and or the Discord. Let's begin with Jennifer.
Well, I mentioned Shiron J. Zhao. I think that is the name of their YouTube channel. Um, and I'll type it in the chat in a second. But especially for Eric, as well as anybody else listening, I want to recommend Defunct Land. That's the one I talked about. Who the host does these deep dives into started with old theme parks, also has a sub series on old television shows, and and it's just fascinating, like really, really well researched. Like that's one that I pay attention to. That's not a backgrounder. So that's a Defunct Land is a fabulous. It just really, I've learned so much, about, I mean, in a way, about how to do research. It's really cool. There's another series called Sideways, and I'm mentioning these because they're a little bit outside those broad topics I mentioned before. But there's another channel called Sideways, and the host talks about music. Does these really smart, intensive like analyses of the music, and primarily in movies. I think sometimes in TV shows. And my son, who is a composer, recommended it to me, and so I know it's kind of got that like real musician seal of approval. But it's another one that's just beautifully researched, really well presented, and super engrossing. So, and if you're bored, you can just put on somebody doing crafts or farming and leave it on in the background. But those are probably three of the top ones, that I would recommend to folks. And I'll get those put into the chat while Eric's talking.
Thank you. And Eric, what great creators can you recommend?
Yeah, I'll do like a few quick hits. One of my favorites is Ask a Mortician. I think I'm getting that right. I love Ask a Mortician. I'm such a goth. The information that you gain from like various stories about working in the funeral industry, I find fascinating, and all those little stories. And she's just a really great presenter. So I really like Ask a Mortician. That's one of the few that I subscribe to, and I go back to. I like anything that PBS Science does because I'm that guy. So if PBS Science or like some of the video segments from like Nova, or, again, like public media tends to have really cool, like deep dive stuff. That's something that I would take a look at. My favorite like writing craft related sort of nonfiction person, I really like Mary Robinette Kowal's like 60-second, craft videos. And there, in that regard, that's actually really cool for like Instagram or TikTok. But Mary Robinette, as a writing teacher myself, I'm just deeply impressed with the way that she manages to be like, and this is how you increase theme in your story in like 60 seconds. And I'm like, wow, she really pulls it off. She also has some really interesting content on her YouTube channel about other things. So yeah, just in general, she's a creator that I follow for a variety of reasons. So that, and I guess that way, she's more of a personality. Um, but those are three that I thought of, and I'll put those into the chat. Yeah, Ask a Mortician's just a lot of fun. It seems like it shouldn't be, but it is. It is a lot of fun. I love it.
Thanks, Eric, and thanks, Jennifer, for your time and for all this interesting information. And thank you to the audience for showing up and listening to us. And we hope to see you later in the next panel. Have a great day.